About 5 years ago, something shifted in me. I stopped chasing jobs where solitude was a side effect and started choosing the ones where being alone wasn't just accepted, it was expected. I'd finally come to terms with the fact that I was an introvert, and for once, I leaned into it. No more open offices, no more fake smiles over break room coffee. I needed space. So I tried wildlife surveys, a forestry internship. One summer, I even did private fire mitigation, cutting back trees in high-risk zones. And then, this job found me. That's how I ended up stationed at Tower 9, all the way out on the northern edge. The people in charge, whether it was the government or some private agency or whatever, called the area a conservation perimeter. Sounded official, almost noble, but really it was just wilderness. Raw, sprawling wilderness. The kind of place people don't like to leave to chance. The land was vast enough to swallow towns whole. No joke. 13 fire towers dotted the region, each manned by someone like me. They called us rangers, though our job wasn't to wrangle tourists or chase off bears. Mostly, we watched for smoke. Fire prevention, that was the big priority. Now, technically, we weren't supposed to leave our towers, especially not without permission. Dry season meant full lockdown. But in practice, nobody out here really followed that to the letter. The closest supervisor was dozens of miles away, and we all knew it. Logan manned Tower 7, a few miles east of mine. He didn't talk much about his past. Hell, he barely talked at all. But I liked him. We'd meet halfway between our towers sometimes, trade supplies, pass around a flask, and sit quietly by the ridge. No pressure to fill the silence. That's what I appreciated most. Logan was a man of few words, and none of them wasted. Ezekiel, on the other hand, well, he manned Tower 8. That was the closest one to mine, just a short trek away. He'd been out here longer than anyone. Everyone had a different guess. Some said 5 years, others swore it was more like 20. What I did know was simple. Ezekiel never left. The rest of us rotated out when the snow started falling. Winter coverage was optional. Most guys took that chance to go home, warm up, hit pause. But not Ezekiel. Year after year, he stayed through the storms, the isolation, the whole thing. Supposedly, he had some agreement with the agency, a permanent watch post. I'd only spoken to him twice. The first time was when I passed him on the ridge heading toward Tower 6. I didn't say anything. Logan had filled my head with enough creepy stories that I honestly didn't want to engage. But right as I passed, Ezekiel looked at me and asked if I'd seen anything strange. That's all he said. I told him no. He just nodded and stared off like he was already thinking about something else. Cold, distant. Something about him made the air feel heavy. My first winter, that one was on me. I volunteered. The agency warned me, pay cut, response time would be garbage if something went wrong, but I signed the form anyway. I was starting to love the job, the quiet, the structure, the rhythm of it all. Once Logan rotated out, things went still. His tower light stopped flickering across the ridge in the evenings, and that left me and Ezekiel. But I didn't dwell on it. I focused on the forest, and the forest was something else. There were no straight lines out here, just hills and valleys stitched together by frozen creeks. Snow blanketed the ground early that year. The trees stood dark against the white, tall evergreens unmoving while wind carved long spines through the snow. It looked like something had dragged a tail through the powder and vanished. One afternoon, I was doing a routine patrol near the edge of my range. The light had shifted into that golden winter hue that makes every shadow feel exaggerated. I just finished checking some brush piles left by fire crews when I spotted something across the slope. Too far to make out clearly, but it looked like a deer. Or at least, it was shaped like one. But the way it moved was all wrong. It wasn't limping, it was dragging itself. One leg just didn't seem to cooperate. Now, protocol says we don't interfere with wildlife. If something's hurt, that's nature's business, not ours. But I was new enough that I still gave a damn. I stood there a moment, trying to decide. The slope ahead was clear, sky still bright. The thing had left a red line in the snow, blood, no doubt. So I figured I'd follow it a little, see if I could help, or at least make sure it didn't suffer alone in some ditch until spring. I checked my gear, radio on, jacket zipped, enough daylight left. The snow was fresh, and the tracks were easy to see, but they were off. Not like any deer I'd seen. Bigger, uneven, wrong. They weren't symmetrical, and the spacing was too long for a creature dragging itself. Some tracks looked melted, like they were formed in warm snow. I kept going. The blood trail dipped into a basin where the trees thinned out. Wind started to shift, fast and sharp, funneling down the slope like it had intent. There was no warning. The sky had been clear, but within seconds, the world went white. The snow didn't just fall, it attacked. Horizontal, blinding. My breath caught in my throat. The trail vanished in front of me, then behind me. I turned to retrace my steps, but my footprints were gone. Sealed away like I'd never walked there at all.
Panic crept in. I keyed the radio. Tower 9 to anyone. Whiteout conditions. Need triangulation assist. Anyone read me? Nothing. Silence. I moved slowly, hugging trees, trying to recognize anything, but everything looked the same. Shifting snow, dead branches, gray light. No sense of direction. My breath fogged up the inside of my hood. I pulled the drawstring tighter and forced myself to keep moving. And then I saw it. The deer, or what I thought was a deer, was lying in the snow, about 10 feet ahead, half buried, ribs jutting upward, one leg twisted at a sick angle. I approached carefully, expecting it to bolt, but it didn't move, not at first. Its head wasn't right. It had patches of stiff fur, but its face looked off, more like a skull than a snout. And it had lips, thin, cracked lips stretched across a row of teeth that were almost human. Antlers jutted out, but they weren't natural. Sculpted looking, deliberate. And then its eye moved. It turned and locked onto me. That's when it pulled a paw, yes, a paw, out from underneath its body, thick, furred like a bear's. It dragged itself forward and began to rise, something between a man and a beast, and it lunged.
It moved faster than I thought anything in that condition could. I barely had time to react. I dropped the radio and fell sideways, crashing into the snow. Its claws raked past my jacket sleeve, tearing fabric but missing skin by inches. I rolled, kicked hard at its ribs. It was like kicking a wall of wet fur and muscle. My boot connected, but it barely slowed the thing down. The smell, God, the smell hit me next. Hot, wet breath full of rot blasted against my face and made me gag. Then I saw it, a gash, a deep open wound running along its side, already crusted with black-red blood. Acting on instinct, I snatched up a nearby branch, snapped it clean off from under the ice, and jammed it straight into the wound. It worked. The thing let out a noise, something between a howl and a cough, and reeled back, slamming into the snow with enough force to send powder flying. I didn't wait to see if it was down for good. I ran. Through the trees, over the drifts, pushing past branches that clawed at my jacket and stung my face. My legs felt like ice. My lungs burned with every breath, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Somewhere between pure fear and dumb luck, I stumbled my way through the white. And then I saw it. A shape rising through the mist, thin legs of steel climbing upward like a skeletal hand. A tower. Ezekiel's tower. I had somehow looped west, off course and out of breath, but I didn't care. I ran to the base, found the staircase, and climbed. The metal was slick with frost, my boots slipping with every step. I banged on the door at the top, once, twice, then pushed it open without waiting for an answer. The warmth hit me like a wave. Inside, it was dim but cozy. An old stove crackled in the corner. The windows were covered with thick, mismatched curtains. Furs, blankets, pelts, all piled high along the walls. I stepped in and shut the door behind me, hands trembling from cold and adrenaline. And that's when I saw it. The guns. Wall to wall. Racks of rifles, crates of handguns, some modern, some old enough to belong in a museum. Every single one was etched with symbols, runes, markings I couldn't read, circles, lines, carvings that didn't look decorative so much as ritualistic. Bullets were spread across a table near the window, and they weren't just brass. They gleamed like silver, or something rarer. Above them, dream catchers swayed gently in the corners. On the shelves, skulls, animal skulls, each one marked with red wax or dried ink, symbols painted directly onto bone. I backed away and collapsed into a low chair by the stove. My heart still thudded in my chest. I leaned forward, elbows on knees, trying to breathe again. And then, the stairs creaked. Footsteps. At first, I thought it was the thing, that it had followed me, tracked my scent, maybe watched me climb the stairs. I jumped to my feet and ran toward the wall, hand reaching instinctively for one of Ezekiel's guns. But it wasn't the creature. It was Ezekiel. He stepped through the door like he was coming back from the store. No urgency, no panic. His coat was powdered with snow, gloves off, eyes calm. He looked at me, no surprise in his expression, and shut the door behind him. I stammered, "Ezekiel, look, you won't believe me, but..." "You saw it?" I froze, mouth still open. He walked further in. Was it injured? I nodded, still trying to make sense of his tone. "Good," he muttered. "Means the trap worked." Trap? Before I could ask anything else, he turned to a shelf in the corner and pulled down a thick, leather-bound book. It was warped from moisture, marked in faded lettering I couldn't even begin to decipher. He flipped through it like a man reading the weather report. "I am sorry," he said, not looking at me. "I hadn't let one slip in over a decade. Maybe I'm getting old." He found the page he wanted, turned the book toward me. There was an illustration. Not a guess, an actual diagram, so precise it had to be drawn from life. The thing, the antlers, the claws, the human-like features and twisted body, mid-motion, alive. "It's smart," Ezekiel said, watching the page. "Some say it's 3 creatures sewn together. Others think it's one being splitting apart into 3. He shut the book and slid it under his arm. Then he turned to another shelf and pulled down a flat, round object wrapped in cloth. He unwrapped it slowly and held it out to me.
A mirror, but not like any I'd ever seen. The surface was too dark for glass and too shiny for metal. It was almost liquid-looking. The edge of it wasn't even visible, just a smooth infinity of reflection. Symbols etched into the rim. My own face staring back at me, delayed, like it had to think about appearing. "Take it," he said. I didn't move. He stepped closer. "You're coming with me. You know where it was last. I need you to take me there." "Wait, what? Why me?" "You think I want company?" he snapped. "Trust me, I'd rather do this alone, but I'm old. 1 man can't kill it. 2, maybe." He let go of the mirror. I caught it instinctively, feeling the weight settle into my palms. "You're part of this now," he said, "whether you want to be or not." And that was it. He didn't argue, didn't beg, just started loading up. Crossbow from the wall, a pouch of bolts, a knife on his belt, coat back on. I followed. What else could I do? Outside, the snow had slowed, but not much. The wind still howled above the trees, and the sky hung low, pale and smothering. Visibility was maybe 20 yards. I led the way, moving back through my broken trail while Ezekiel followed with a purpose. One hand on the crossbow, one steadying himself against branches. We didn't talk much. He nodded when I pointed out familiar terrain. I kept scanning ahead, heart racing with every branch that twitched or snowbank that looked disturbed. I didn't know if the thing had moved on. I didn't know if it could bleed out. I didn't know anything at all, except that we were walking straight back toward it. And I was the bait.
We found the clearing sooner than I expected. The whole hike had felt like hours, but it had barely been 30 minutes. I'd run farther than I thought during the panic. The snow there was disturbed, slashed through with deep, jagged paths, stained with dark streaks. Not fresh blood anymore. Old, dark veins of it curled through the white like roots. Ezekiel crouched low, brushing snow aside until he exposed frozen soil. His movements were quiet, methodical, like he was looking for something he'd seen before. Meanwhile, I just stood there, holding that mirror like it might burn me if I blinked. My mind was still racing. Could I actually do this? Could I hold my ground if it came back? Would I freeze up again? Would Ezekiel be able to finish the job, especially now, especially at his age? He looked back at me suddenly and said, "Keep your eyes open." And then, just like before, it was there. The gully to our right exploded. Trees bowed outward under the force of something massive. Snow launched skyward, and in that blur of white and brown and shadow, the creature came charging. Ezekiel turned, lifting the crossbow, but he was a second too slow. It slammed into him like a truck. He went down hard and the crossbow flew from his hands, sliding across the clearing into a clump of trees. The thing stood over him now, looming, shifting. Its outline was impossible to hold in your head, like it kept changing shape the longer you looked. One shoulder convulsed with too many joints, too many muscles packed into the wrong places. Its limbs twitched, like they weren't sure what order to move in. Its breathing was ragged, wet, human, and not at the same time. Ezekiel tried to reach for something on his belt, maybe a knife, but the creature reared back and drove an elbow straight across his chest. I heard the crack. I moved. Without thinking, I rushed in and kicked it in the flank, the same side where I jammed that stick earlier. My boot connected just above the old wound. It screamed. A noise I'll never forget. Not one sound, but several, layered, like something howling in a cave and something else trying to speak from inside it. It stumbled. I grabbed Ezekiel by the arm and tried to drag him, but his legs weren't moving. His mouth opened, but no words came out. His hand twitched, pointing toward the trees. The crossbow. The creature snarled and stood again. This time, some of its skin, fur, muscle, whatever, peeled away in clumps, revealing a slick, pulsing underside that looked like muscle strung over bone. Its eyes locked on me. One was human, one was not. "Move," Ezekiel managed to yell. I backed up, raising the mirror, forgotten until that moment. And it froze. Just like that, its body locked in place, twitching only slightly, as though frozen mid-thought. Its snarl faded, its arms slackened. It was like a glitch, stuck in a moment that refused to end. I didn't question it. I dropped the mirror and ran for the crossbow. My hands were shaking. Snow had buried part of it, but I pulled it out, gripped it tight. The bolt was already loaded. I turned. It was still staring at the mirror, still motionless. I aimed, took a breath, lined up the shot. Then I hesitated. This was it. One bolt, one chance. If I missed, it blinked. The spell broke. The creature moved, lunged not at me, but straight at Ezekiel, claws stretching wide. He lifted his arms in some half-formed defense, but he wasn't going to stop it. I didn't think. I fired. The bolt punched straight into its ribs, deep, solid, hard enough that the creature twisted mid-motion and let out a scream that shattered the clearing. That scream, again, not one voice but many. It was like it echoed across itself, like something inside it was screaming in pain while something else was trying to hold it together. Its body wavered.
edges stretching, thinning, unraveling.
Smoke. That's the only way I can describe it. Not like it burned, but like it was pulled apart, backward. Pieces of it drifted into the cold air, like strands of mist being sucked back into the sky. And then, just like that, it was gone. Silence. No rustling, no breath, just the whisper of wind over snow. I looked over at Ezekiel. He was slumped against a tree, his coat soaked through with blood, his breath shallow. He gave a dry laugh. Not bad. Then he coughed, and blood laced the corner of his mouth. I knelt beside him. "We need to get you back." He waved me off weakly. "I'll manage. Done worse." I didn't believe him. Not for a second. But he looked up at me with something that might have been respect, or maybe just resignation. "You did good," he said. "Not everyone gets that close and walks away." I sat there for a long moment, staring at the empty clearing, the scattered snow, the absence of footprints or blood trails or anything that might prove what just happened. And I thought about what he said earlier, about getting old, about how he hadn't let one slip in over a decade, and now he had. That's what stuck with me. Not the creature, not the trap, not the mirror, but the way he'd said it, like he was disappointed in himself, like he was the only one left holding something back. And for the first time since I took the job, I wondered, what else was out here? And more importantly, who'd be around to stop it when Ezekiel was gone?